Gene Lewis, and as you can tell, almost instantaneously, there's twice as many people here as there normally are. One of them, his name is Ryan Nanni. He is, hold on. Let me read the actual intro that I wrote down. Tell me if I'm wrong on any of this. NYU law school graduate, lawyer. I was literally gonna ask, like, can you still practice law? Because I feel like, I feel like it's time for you to pivot from being a podcast host to representing these college football athletes to get that real money. Okay, so we got NYU law school graduate, former lawyer, so he can not hashtag lawyer you yet. Co-host of the internet's only college football podcast, which I'm a massive fan of. I've mentioned a bunch of times on this show before. Official Blood Week inspector. You are one of the few people on the planet that can determine if it is in fact Blood Week, including the Twitter account, Is It Blood Week? Banner Society editor-in-chief. Former, yes. Secret base. By the way, there's a person who listens to this podcast who made me a secret base graphic when I had a fake beef with another Quidditch player. Dead serious. It was beef history, and it was like all these moments on Twitter where I intentionally harassed this woman who is half my size, and we're actually cool with each other. Shout out Maya. And then most importantly, the actual this is technically one of the few moments where you're talking to a person post the peak of their career. He was the 2018 Outback Bowl Bloomin' Onion mascot, which was the absolute peak of Ryan Nanni's career. How you doing, man? Right. Right. The best part about it is like you hold that as a person from Texas. I'll tell you this much: you go to any town in Texas, there's like half the dudes that are in these small towns to tell you about the time they went to state their senior year. You know what I mean? Like you went to the Outback Bowl. Like, it's actually significantly better. Like the guys who tell you about going to state when I used to be a high school sports reporter, and it's actually really wild to see some of the kids I cover on TV playing football on a regular basis. One of them was Adonai Mitchell, played for Georgia, and was a part of the greatest ass kicking in the history of college football. I used to cover him when he was like a freshman in high school, when he was smaller, and now he's taller, faster, way more swole. It's very scary. Him and Kenneth Murray, I have a photo of me and Kenneth Murray, who's the middle linebacker for the Chargers, and he's like relatively normal-sized human being. Now he's not anymore. No. Now he is taller than almost every single secondary player on his team, including Derwin James, and he's also like just walking around like he can't. Yeah, like he can't wipe his own ass, but I know he can because he's also crazy flexible. But yeah, anyway, Ryan, I'm gonna be honest with you. I wrote a couple of things on this interview sheet here and a bunch of questions and stuff like that. But just like every podcast, first of all, the reason that you're here is quite possibly, I'd like to say, start off the show by thanking Elon Musk. Whatever he's trying to do, he's got my vote, because he kept Twitter around long enough for Ryan to send out probably one of the most dangerous tweets in the history of Twitter, where he was like, my goal is to go on as many podcasts as possible in the year 2023. And somehow he went from being on multiple shows with two different Golics, Mike Golick Jr. and Big Golick, right? One of the greatest radio hosts of all time in the history of sports talk radio. And now he's on the Broke Boy Sports podcast. How? The Joe Rogan Experience. I'm kidding. You'd be the first. Okay, cool. I just wonder if you just like, maybe we hear these guys out. Maybe they're on to something. You know what I mean? Like, me personally, like as a black person, I just be like, I want the awkward moment of being like on the show with white supremacists, like, because they do not care. Like, and I know this is a strange concept, but I'll tell you this, as a person, I've been black my entire life. I don't know if you know this, Ryan. But I tell this to my friend. His name is Snowman, not related to cocaine whatsoever. It's literally a nickname he gave himself in 8th grade, and he's just, yes, I'm dead serious about gave the nickname to, well, he made it stuff. It's branding. It's branding, and yeah, it's high quality branding. Probably like one of the greatest achievements of his entire personal life. And he's pretty successful as a human being, right? But he and I were talking, and I was like, I mean, I respect the Klansmen more than I respect the secret races. You know, like at least the Klansmen's letting you know, like. See, but when you see the hood, you know what time it is. You know, like. Yeah, it's time to go. It's game time, right? It's game time. Right. But the Giants still cross, right? Like the Giant. One of the. Well, if you listen to a certain side of Twitter, the Klan's not even that big anymore. Like, they're not popping in the streets anymore. Like, what do you think? You know what I mean? Like, I, one, can confirm, been alive for 30 years, have never seen a Klansman. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, they're just not in the streets like they used to be. Also, like, now that black people can own guns, it's a little different. But. Right. 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 That's a really good draw, you know what I mean? Like you can say, like you could be a white person and say the N-word out in the woods with the fire around with your other racist brethren, you know, like that's true. I would also like to suggest there is an alternative to going into the woods with a bunch of dudes, more than likely with a fire burning and like just being racist. You could just be a Wiccan and go in and get and add the potential of getting magic powers. Like, why would you want like, I guess racism is magical in a lot of different ways, but like, why do that when you can get real magic powers? Like, why do that when you can? Yeah, when you could possess your boss and be like, give me a 200% raise and just like no questions asked. Like, instead of just being like, hey, you want to put this uncomfortable clothing on or whatever and dance around this fire? Like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, right. Right. Yeah, kids, become Wiccans. Like, dude, like, don't be racist. Become a witch. Become a witch. It's not hard. It's not hard. So you've been on 10. Am I number 10 or is this 11? Okay, cool. Right. Yeah. Cool, cool. So you've been on like so out of the seven, two of them have been the Golics, and the other five have been TCU podcasts. Yeah, I can't wait until this devolves into you getting Katie Nolan out of retirement for her podcast for one episode. Yeah. Side note: so the national championship happened. I obviously listen to Shutdown Fullcast. You guys, first of all, I'd like to point out bowl coverage, 10 out of 10, absolutely perfect, absolute perfection every single time. My girlfriend discovered what bowl season was this year. She went to Baylor and was a music major, so obviously zero connection with the football team. She went there with Robert Griffin III a little bit, so she was there during the hype or whatever, and still didn't care about football. Like, you know, but so yeah, we got that going on. Bowl coverage for Shutdown Fullcast, absolutely perfect. I sent her the link to the Vibes Tumblr with the Bluetooth speaker in the bottom of it, and she was like, I think I need this. And I was like, I think I need it too. Like, I don't need speakers like that in my life, but I think I have to have this Bahamas Bowl Vibe speaker set. Vibes Tumblr. Truly elite stuff. Honestly, at this point, guys, you should be going to those websites to check and see if they got the discounts popping off. Because once the bowl's gone over, you can get, because if they're white t-shirts, I recently have become absolutely obsessed with tie-dye. My Quidditch team, the top part of our jerseys is tie-dye or whatever. So I have to get like an undershirt that matches that, and I've tie-dyed like so many different shirts. And so every time I see a white shirt, I'm like, that white shirt could be better. You know? Right. Yep. Yep. That's what I love about playoff. So sorry. Side note: I love stupid sports gear that I can use to work out in, and t-shirts and stuff like that. So I am obsessed with NBA playoff shirts that are a year old, out of date. Same thing with NFL shirts and everything like that. And then of course the consummate, don't understand why they even exist, but they do exist for the photos and the gram and all that kind of stuff. Division championship shirts for NFL teams. Right. Like, imagine Tom Brady and the Buccaneers having shirts on, being proud of, they're like, conquered the South. That's right. Absolute domination. It was never in question. First try. Right. Right. You're also talking about a league that has a team that hung a banner for going to Wild Card Weekend in the Indianapolis Colts for that one time. I would also like to point out one of my greatest dreams is to witness, because I know it's out there somewhere, the Hall of Champions that never were. When they didn't know who they print the t-shirts out for whoever wins the decisive game, right? And you see the Super Bowl champion, and it's like, yeah, man, remember that one time people make the joke of like, there's some kids in another country somewhere that think that the New York Giants are undefeated and the Buffalo Bills have won 4 consecutive Super Bowls. Yeah, there's got to be somebody who has those t-shirts out there. There's got to be a person at the factory every single time that's like throwing them in the back of a truck. Like, nobody cares about these shirts, right? Sold. Yes, exactly. It really does feel that way, especially if you're like Buffalo Bills, four-time Super Bowl champions in a row, like kind of stuff. But yeah, the national championship game happened. Turns out, when you're bigger, stronger, and faster than your opponent, it's really easy to win football games. Who would have thought? The other thing that I brought out of it is that TCU, when a lot of people were talking about their strategy and all the X's and O's and stuff like that, TCU uses heavily a formation called dollar, which is, if you guys know how money works in football, that was a joke for the real football heads out there. Quarter, nickel, all that kind of stuff like that. Dollar is the one that gets like the absolute most defensive backs and the fastest linebackers on the field. So it's like 3 down linemen. Basically, those 3D linemen are completely fucked because they have to be literally in a 3v5 fight. More often than not, they're getting doubled at every single position except one of them. And then there's linebackers who are in charge of like, hey, if they try and get a little funny and try and run the football, it's only you guys in the whole. Yeah, exactly. And then everybody else is a defensive back because, speed is king or whatever until it isn't, which is coming soon. I can't wait for the time where we're being like, hey, man, like, those guys are like real fast, but they're also like 155 pounds. I'm just saying, like, we are mere months. We're probably a couple years away from the Iowa Hawkeyes offensive playbook becoming the new meta for football. You know what I mean? I've always basically when the 49ers are going through their issues with like realizing that Jimmy Garoppolo is better than average quarterbacks and slightly above average and at his absolute best is probably top 10 in the league in terms of playing quarterback, I was just like, hey man, now that they got Christian McCaffrey, what's the point of not going full wishbone? Like, why are we not having Christian McCaffrey in the middle to satisfy the people who have to there's a group of people out there, not saying anything about them, but there's a group of people out there that absolutely has to have a white person touch the ball before the play starts. And now they've got him. They've got the real unicorn. Not only is Christian McCaffrey the white guy touching the ball, he's a white running back in the NFL. He's out here breaking stereotypes. You know what I mean? He's catching the snaps for the wishbone. They're holding the ball out in front, and we're doing straight up old school. Deebo Samuel's on the right, Brandon Ayuk on the left, and George Kittle's running seam routes, and we're going straight to the Super Bowl, baby. We're going straight to the Super Bowl with that offense. Anyway, I'll let Kyle. Yeah, no, we're getting weird with it. You know what I mean? Like, we're getting weird with it. It's like, yeah, man, we're not interested in quarterbacks that don't run anything less than a 4.5. We need at least a 4.5 out here. But yeah, so TCU uses a dollar formation up front as a defense, and it betrayed them because they came up against a team that was comprised of some of the biggest human beings on the planet that are also faster than like 99% of human beings that are in existence. It's scary. Which results in 8 yards per carry. And I don't know if you guys know this or not. Some people will call that efficiency in football. Right. Life comes at you fast, kids. And most of the time it is wearing red and black. Anyway, the side thing, the really messed up part about it is that like TCU has two legitimate NFL prospects at the cornerback position, and they got killed in the pass game. It was kind of wild. But yeah, you said when I mentioned by the way, the dollar thing, the reason I brought that up in particular is because one of my weird things that I've been doing as I slowly transition from being a person that watches television to being a person that literally watches Twitch and YouTube and Twitter and uses that as my form of entertainment, TikTok, Instagram, all that kind of stuff like that. I've recently fallen into Madden Twitter, which is a lot of fun because it is guys who pretend that, like, guys who are strangely very adept at knowing football. And especially at the highest level, when you watch like comp Madden players, they can identify coverages that like a quarterback can. Like I've seen a video of this guy named TD Barrett. Shout out TD Barrett. He's a funny guy from Canada. He played against Cam Newton, and Cam Newton was like calling out his like legitimately Cam Newton, like the actual Cam Newton. He plays Madden on Mondays because that's what he does in his retirement, running a 7-on-7 football team. Has a weird podcast where he kind of pushes like slightly way too conservative ideals of like what men and women should do, and plays Madden. Which, hey, if that's not, like, he's from, like, the country out in Georgia. He's living the dream. Like, going to church on Sunday. A dream. He played against TD Barrett, and he kind of, they showed each other, and it was like, this is an NFL player versus a guy who exclusively plays Madden, and for some reason, they're on the same exact wavelengths about how to play football. And it's very creepy. But Dollar is the meta defense in Madden right now. It's really funny because nobody believes anybody will run the damn ball. First of all, and then two, there are the way pass rush works in Madden is very weird. Like even ridiculously good linemen don't win instantaneously. Like we see if you are a big fan. I watch. I'm subscribed to We Are Big Guys, which is an offensive lineman Instagram account, and then D-line videos, which they exclusively find the most disgusting videos of defensive linemen making offensive linemen look like me when I play college football. There was literally one yesterday where they showed it wasn't Miles Jack. It was defensive lineman from the Jaguars going up against the left tackle for the Tennessee Titans, who has statistically put up one of the worst seasons ever in like NFL football. It's him rotating over because somebody forgot to help out on hitting. He got a chip block, he missed, and then he just ran straight through him. He ran into him. He did not get any footing whatsoever. He was literally on his heels, and they probably needed to check his ankles because they literally got broken from how much force he got forced backwards with, and then he got straight to Yes, very much so. No, his body's just not physically there. Even it's so weird because you're like, that's a giant person, and like technically y'all are both elite athletes, but in this very moment, you look like a normal person playing against an NFL player. Yeah. But basically, the pass rush in Madden isn't as dominant as it is in real life, so you have time to throw the ball, like way more time than you usually would to throw the ball down the field, and that subsequently means you need to drop even more people than an NFL defense would into coverage. And so that's what they do. They want to get as many. Everybody's obsessed with speed. Like, for instance, in Madden, Quez Watkins, the guy who's like the fifth wide receiver in certain situations for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's a 99 speed, and he is one of the most valuable players in all of Madden. Yeah, so that's their whole deal, because speed is king in Madden, which is a reflection of football to a certain degree. But in football, you're required to, be able to have finesse with your speed in some cases. But more like, Madden guys are just like, nah, man, I'm gonna just sling that thing down there. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is, man. So Ryan, I got a couple of questions. First of all, why are we putting a pin in your law in your law? Right. Okay. Lawyer powers. Oh, hold on. That's the bad boy lawyer. You want to go to, that's the bad boy lawyer place? That's where the real money's to be made. Jail. I'm sorry. Let me correct that last part. You lied in court and got caught. There's a difference. Yeah. That sounds like the premise of Better Call Saul. Also, I would also like to say I hope everything that you just said is a massive part of the standalone Daredevil show that's going to be on Disney Plus. where he's just like, I have to do like continued learning instead of fighting in Hell's Kitchen tonight. Sorry, guys. We gotta get. It has to be that way. I would also like to ask how you got into sports media as a whole, because it is increasingly becoming evident that the people who like target getting into sports media like from the jump are not the ones who like really rise to the top. Like there's a lot of people who really have a lot of passion but don't have like the talent to be convincing and persuasive with people. But like you talk about like Mina Kimes. Like Mina Kimes was writing about other stuff. Like Bomani Jones was writing about music before he got into sports media, but they were all very... Right, exactly. And they all kind of like, people found their talent to be persuasive and the passion that they have with it, because she's been a Seahawks fan her entire life. I recently became a Seahawks fan. Bobby Wagner's my favorite football player, so I'm using that as a way to foray my way into being a Seahawks fan like a couple years ago, and also to get away from the Houston Texans, because that's the... Look, man, again, yeah. Right.
Anderson, who was writing with him, left to go work at either Sports Illustrated or Yahoo or something else. And one of them reached out to me, I think it was Spencer, and was like, hey, noticed you like have a lot of funny things to say in the comments, blah, blah, blah. If you're interested and want to just like write something, if you ever feel like writing something, like we'd be happy to post it, whatever. Not like a paid gig, but also not like, hey, we're asking you to do X a week, Y a month, anything like that. And so it's like, okay, that's cool. Did that for a while, just sort of like in my free time or when I, wanted to sort of blow off at work or whatever. And then that sort of turned into, okay, now we're going to bring you on as a part-time contributor. That was all under a pseudonym at that point because I still had the legal job and I was still doing that full-time.
So, Ryan, what was it, man? What was it?
I think at that point it was either Brady Quinn, Medicine Woman, or Run Home Jack. I don't remember which one. None of these make any sense, and none of them are good pseudonyms, but they're pseudonyms all the same. And then at that point, I was working for the city of New York. I was working for basically the internal investigations office. Mm-hmm. It's called the Department of Investigations. And doing like real work, like doing investigations on Rikers Island of potentially corrupt correctional officers. And
so you were Daredevil. Okay, cool. All right, got you.
yeah. Without all the good fighting and leather outfits. And at that point, we had a mayoral election. It was Bloomberg's last term. He was out. De Blasio was coming in. And a thing happened where everybody I worked with, and this happens, I guess, at most city agencies, is just like, okay, well, I'm going to go move on to something else. Because, like, from the top down, things start getting replaced. You get a new commissioner, you get a new assistant commissioner, et cetera, et cetera. And I was sort of like, okay, I don't know if I want to like wait and see if I like the new people, if they like me, whatever, because SB Nation had a college football writing job open up. And so I was sort of at a like fortuitous time where I was like, all right, I've been a lawyer at that point for 6 years. I have this opportunity to go do this thing full time, which I've like done part time at that point for 2 or 3 years. And I was just like, sure, let's go do it. But none of this is like a sensible or normal path to get into.
I'm gonna be honest. Lawyer to sports media seems to be like a massive path.
Yes.
So kids go to law school.
Yes,
we learn become a witch. Go to law school. All right, cool. Great advice. Sorry. But yeah, Ryan. On that aspect though, man, did you actually enjoy being a lawyer?
There were parts of it I definitely enjoyed. I think client advocacy is a really interesting and cool thing. Is if you have clients that you like and want to work for, and like all lawyers, you're going to have a mix. Sometimes you're just working for nameless, faceless corporation. But even within that, it's sort of like, okay, do I think the people within this group that I'm working with are ethical? Do I think they're trying to do a good job? Like, do I think they've been screwed over? Whatever. And I was also fortunate enough to, I think, work with smart and kind attorneys, and at least in terms of like working nicely with somebody who is very junior and still figuring things out. Cool. The things I didn't like about it is that the hours are a lot, but you know that going in. That's not like a surprise or anything. But once you do it for a while, it can be a little bit of a grind. And it also has a lot of it's not paper pushing because that makes it sound purposeless, but there is a lot of like grunt work to be done. What is known in the industry as document review, where it's basically like, all right, the opposing counsel sent over 100 gigs of emails from their client that they have to turn over as part of this lawsuit. And now you got to go through them and figure out which ones are important and not. And so part of you is like, so part of you is like, that sounds fun. And when you find something good, that is fun. But that's after you spent 47 hours looking at like meaningless, like this is a calendar invite. It's not even an email. This is another calendar invite. This is a response to the calendar. Like there's a lot. So there's some drudgery involved is what I would say. But like overall, I thought it was a good experience and I'm not sad that I did it by any means.
Okay, then. No, I would hope not, especially with all the money that you spend on it. You know what I mean? So
yes, there is.
And
that
it's
too.
not like I had a friend who she's she went to NYU Law as well. So shout out Jay Lee. She got me into Quidditch too. So going back to college football for a little bit, man, and this is the transition. So how long until? And this is a weird gap. This takes a combination of like paying attention to the NFL, paying attention a little bit to high school football, paying attention a little bit to college football. How many years until dudes just start circumventing college altogether and start going to like these alternative spring leagues like USFL, XFL to get this money so they don't have to do like the bullshit I'm gonna pretend I go to class type thing?
I think NIL really makes that tricky,
right?
Because
the branding of the school is important.
If you didn't have NIL, I could see that pathway. But like because NIL has two sort of like ways for this to circumvent that. One, it is becoming in a lot of cases pay for play. I don't have a problem with that, but it's like very clearly not what NIL was supposed to be or sort of like how it was being presented. But like Michigan of all schools has a fund that's basically like, this is a fund to convince people, draft eligible players who still have eligibility at school to stay. Like that's what the fund is for. And that's fine. Like I'm glad we're all being out in the open about it. So that's one thing. And the other is the more traditional NIL where it's like, okay, you know, Popeyes wants to sponsor you, or local car dealer, or, you know, laundromat or whatever wants to sponsor you. And that is very much tied to your value as a member of this school program, as somebody who is playing on TV. Because the other thing that's tricky is like, yeah, you can go play in some of these alternative leagues. If you are really, really, really good, if you are like a top 50 player, you are not going to get the same exposure, at least right now, playing in those leagues than you will playing in the evening game on ESPN, the 3:30 SEC game, the Pac-12 championship, the big noon Saturday game, whatever it is. It's like
you won't get talked about on Fullcast After Dark either. Like,
no,
just
you won't. Yes, so I think there are some things that would have to happen before a lot of players would start to make that leap. And I don't know if we're fully there, because the other, and I honestly don't know this. If you go to if you play college, I'm pretty sure I have this right. If you know I'm wrong, go ahead and call me out. If you play college football and you get injured in the process, the college will take care of your medical bills and your rehab while you are there. Even if it's like you're done. You're not playing college
Right.
football anymore. You still sort of have all of that covered. I don't know how much that is true in some of these alternative leagues. So you are taking potentially an injury risk by saying, like, if you go here, at the very least, if you go to college, you suffer a career-ending injury, you still have your scholarship and you can still go, you got to figure out what you're going to do, but you have a pathway set up. If you go to the XFL and you can't play football anymore, the XFL doesn't really have anything for you to do. They don't
Or a
have
reason
like a
to keep
pathway.
paying for you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think I think it will end up being a good path or an interesting path for some players. I think the money would have to tilt pretty heavily from what it is now before you start seeing like, half of the Rivals 100 is going here instead of doing
half of the Rivals 100 is trying to get on the St. Louis Battlehawks roster.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And like, this is the other thing that's interesting about it. If the NBA is obviously the closest comparison here, because for years you could just make that jump, and there have been some players who have sort of said, like, I'm going to go do the international thing, and it's a little different there because you have to travel abroad, and the G League's made that a little different. It has ameliorated that somewhat, but like, if you're 18,
Right.
it's a little different.
Whose parents are gonna let their, like, I get it when they're 18 they make their own decisions, but like, if I'm a parent, I'm not letting my 18, like, I'm like, I used to ask this question all the time, like, you feel comfortable letting your son go play against Ray Lewis?
Yeah,
Like,
right. And like, even beyond just like playing on the field, when you go to college, it's sort of like adult life, the junior edition,
right?
Like, there are people who can help you figure out, like, this is how you do this is how you do that. If you go to the XFL and you're a Battlehawk or whatever, and you're from, I don't know,
how many XFL teams can you name? Right.
And at this point, this is an unfair game because, like, I feel like they've rotated and changed, and between all the leagues that have started and folded, I'm at a disadvantage.
I'll tell you one. San Antonio has one now. Me and my friends are always looking for dumb sports things to do in Houston. They're having the Final Four, but the San Antonio Brahmas are a thing, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. Like, Brahmas are like one of the strangest looking cows ever, but they're like a big deal in Texas culture in general. There's so many high schools where their mascot is a Brahma because that's the naturally present cow that's nearby. It's very weird.
Do you think this is going to become an alternative pathway for players who want to just skip the college thing and go to the NFL?
It seems like one, that's the way that they spike the talent pool, right? Because right now what they're getting is guys who couldn't stick on NFL rosters, which guess what? If you listen to like any NFL player, like Chad Johnson has commented on this when he went to the CFL. He's like, there's a lot of dudes in the CFL that can make it in the NFL, but there's just not enough spots. Like, there have to be people, because for whatever people have to say, it takes a lot of talent to overcome the connections that people have with agents and coaches and stuff like that at certain levels. Like, for instance, case in point, do you think does anybody else see the distinct connection of, like, Mike McDaniels being the run game coordinator for the 49ers, going to the Miami Dolphins, becoming the head coach, and then Raheem Mostert signs with the Dolphins in free agency and becomes the starting running back? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's all, like, there are plenty of people who can be a high quality starting running back for the Miami Dolphins, but like, that connection and that faith that they have in you already plays into a factor. But until the money gets, like, significantly higher, like, for instance, the G League Ignite situation is what you would have to have every XFL team become, where every kid that you offer is getting almost $1 million to show up, right? And it should be even more, because football is a far more brutal sport, and you're gonna need a lot more than $1 million to get something popping off. But the G League Ignite is a perfect example of, they had to go over the top to convince kids that the G League Ignite for the top prospects is going to get you ready for the NBA, so you don't go to college. And so far, no offense, We haven't seen one of them really rise to the top. They've stuck on rosters. There's this one kid named Marjon Bucamp who I was obsessed with because when he came out of high school, he foregoed college to go to do a program that some magical trainer on the internet, like legitimately like a guy who doesn't show his face as a trainer on the internet, was like, I developed this system to help you develop into an NBA player. That didn't work out. He got hurt. He ended up going to like some JUCO and then eventually worked his way into the Ignite camp and then got drafted. And I feel like everybody just saw draft night where he was crying his eyes out because he looks like every other person who's achieved their dream. I'm like, no, that kid's been through some shit.
Yeah, right.
Like,
it's a very different path, obviously.
Like, he legitimately posted a GoFundMe on Instagram one night and then deleted it because some, like, famous agent or something, like, hit him up in the comments and they're like, hey, take this down, like, kind of stuff like that. And I remember it because I clicked on the GoFundMe, and if you type his name in on the internet with GoFundMe, it comes up. And it was, like, literally money for him to get from wherever he was in Washington back home to where, and they just couldn't afford it, and now he's an NBA player.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it's got to get to that point, and the only way the money's going to go up is if, you know, we all start getting a little bit more invested in spring football, which, you know what I mean? The big thing that what it really comes down to is they all want to become the farm system for the NFL. And the NFL doesn't need a farm system. They have college football. They have college football who they've made, like, just like the NBA has like a handshake agreement. Like, they don't have like official in writing stuff that they don't do for each other, right? They don't go for certain prospects, all that kind of stuff like that. But the NFL keeps in place the 3-year rule because it benefits them the most, because they're like, you can get better on their dime and then come to us.
Sure, and the Players Association also is happier with this arrangement because, like, the more you can delay young talent coming in, the more your older labor force, the older
keep
part of it,
pushing up the contract numbers. And
yes, and it's like okay, that buys you another 2 years on a roster. That's worth it in the NFL. That's absolutely worth it. Yeah,
especially I listen to this podcast called Crime in Sports. And they basically, like, here's an athlete, and here's all the crimes they committed. Like, they go through their entire life, and they talk about, like, police reports and stuff like that. And they did Ty Cobb. And Ty Cobb was one of the greatest baseball players of all time. Side note, really weird, completely divergent. Ty Cobb's mom was 12 years old when she got married to Ty Cobb's dad, who was 23.
Oh, no.
He was her teacher. And it was like back in the 20s or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which, you know, I don't think you need laws to tell you maybe you don't marry a child.
No.
We've talked about a lot. The Klan, child marriages. Ty Cobb is a baseball player. Ty Cobb got lucky because he invested in, like, he's from Georgia, and he was like, hey, this Coca-Cola thing's like a good idea. And then he got rich because Coca-Cola is like the most dominant drink company on the planet. So they got that going on. And they talk about how much money Ty Cobb made. And they were like $1,500. Like, for a whole year of football. And I'm like, they give $1,500 is like per diem. Twice as much per diem for, like, football players now. And it's wild to think about, like, how the numbers have exploded, man. But yeah, that 2 years is worth it because you can make like $10 million in 2 years. Yeah, man. But yeah, Ryan, I have basically a couple more questions. One of them is about the fact I need to hear. So during 2020, watched a lot of random movies. Got my girlfriend hooked on a lot of random series that are stupid dumb. One of them is the Fast and Furious franchise. I need you to tell me what you believe about. I need to hear thoughts, opinions, likes, dislikes about the ultimate uncle, because that's what Dominic Toretto is, right? He's just the ultimate uncle, right? He went out. He was looking like, dude. He was looking out for Brittany Griner. He was like, I need my niece home by Christmas, and boom.
I mean, yeah. God. So I think what I admire most about The Fast and the Furious as a series is that it has changed so radically from where it started to where it has ended up. And it has never felt any need to explain that, to justify it.
They've become Marvel superheroes.
Yes, yes. Well, what I have said is, like, they have become Mission Impossible films. The stunts, the schemes, the like team element, like these are all Mission Impossible films. And that's fine. Like they're a lot of fun to watch. They are super well made. They have these interesting ensemble casts, blah 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 blah. But like the original movie, which is just aggressively 90s, you're just like...
It is so hardcore 90s. They have a Supra. They have a Toyota Supra as one of them.
Supra. They do have is it a green Supra, if I'm remembering correctly? Yes. Yeah. So, like, I really appreciate that they have decided that they have sort of made that transformation. And it really, I guess, started probably with, like... the fourth movie is probably where they, like, make that switch. And as a result, they, like... The first movie is a movie about car racing,
right?
Illegal street racing. It happens to also be about like an electronics theft ring, which
they were still. By the way, the first Fast and Furious is so old. The first movie is about a Yakuza connected guy stealing DVD players.
DVD players. That's right.
Like legitimate.
That's right. And now it has become like we are stealing super weapons.
They stole a safe one time. Don't forget that.
Yes,
they drove through the city of Brazil with this.
They stole a bank vault.
Actually, they stole two safes. They had a fake safe and then swapped it out with the real safe. And
That's right. That's right. So mostly I appreciate that they have like, if you are like, I don't know, I think like I fit into this kind of box and like these are my limits. The Fast and Furious franchise encourages you to ignore all of that and like go as big as you can.
New year, no limits, baby.
Yes, exactly. And I think that is the greatest thing about this franchise.
Yeah, my girlfriend loves the Hobbs and Shaw movie, which is hands down the most absurd, over the top version of the Fast and the Furious franchise, where like The Rock is a superhero and he like throws people through entire like multiple walls at one time.
Right.
There's one of the movies where he's got beef with Jason Statham, and they just every time they see each other, they just drive their cars head on into each other and jump through the windshield and start a fight.
Yes.
They've driven off multiple buildings to come out unscathed most of the time, or like a slight bump inside the car. I'd also like to point out there is the most Fast and the Furious thing ever to ever happen, and this is a sign that you've built a fan base that unironically loves and hates the series. When they released the trailer for Fast 9 of the Fast Saga, which was really weird that they came to, we're a saga now, because Fast 10 is coming out next year, and I cannot wait for it. Fast 9, they're doing the whole, like, John Cena is Dominic Toretto's secret brother, and all this kind of stuff. Then in the comments, about nothing shy of about 1,000 times, oh man, the only thing left for them to do now is go to space. And if you've watched Fast 9...
I have.
They go to space in a Pontiac Fiero.
They
go to space.
That's right. Ludacris goes to space.
Ludacris and Tyrese go to space in a Pontiac Fiero. Thanks to the guys from a movie that they released 7 years ago, Tokyo Drift. They bring it all. Like, honestly, cannot emphasize how much, if you hate Fast and Furious, you don't like fun. You're just not about it.
The most confusing thing to me about the Fast and Furious has nothing to do with what's on the screen or what's in the movies, because you have to, like, these are definitely things where you have to turn your brain off to some degree. You have to sort of just completely suspend disbelief. It's more like going on an amusement park ride than it is reading a novel. So put that over here. What I don't understand is like why these movies from a production side have turned into like real bitter like rivalries and like these relationships where people don't talk to each other and people refuse to participate in them anymore. And why I don't like, I get that, you know, people have egos, actors obviously do. It's important, like creative control is a thing and this, that, and the other. There's a reason why like Vin Diesel never loses a fight in these movies. But like, it's so odd that would happen here. Like, you know, to use a different example, there's a book out, a relatively recent book about the making of Mad Max Fury Road.
Right.
And a lot of it is about like, Tom Hardy is a lot. He is a lot to work with and like very challenging for Charlize Theron and the crew on the movie. But some of that is like, okay, that is a movie that yeah, sort of has the same level of bombast and stunts and things like that. But there is also like a lot of acting in it. There's a lot of sort of like, we're making
one of the most difficult forms of acting, where like nonverbal communication, like there's almost no words said in Mad Max.
Right. So there's a lot of like, you can understand sort of like, these are people who are very, very serious about theater as a craft. And that can lead to some real big friction because they're doing art. It's not art necessarily in the way most people think of it as, but like it is art. The Fast and the Furious movies are not art. I have like a hard time saying like, this is an artistic venture that we are going through. They are very entertaining and they're very well made, but like, is this the, I like, it's very interesting to me that like this is a hill that some people, mostly Vin Diesel it sounds like, are willing to die on and be like, no, I will not compromise and I will never apologize.
Anything to stop him from after doing another Riddick movie. No, but my thing is like you've talked about the changes. The biggest change to me, obviously, is like the cars. Like it used to be like here is a series of cars that are one, regular cars you can see on the street.
Right.
Two, cars you would never see in person. Right. Yeah. And it's like it was at the heart of it all, like a true masterpiece and love of underground street racing, where it's like there's rich people, there's dudes who take like really shitty cars and they make them look super dope, or they make cars that look really weird. And now every car is just black and like bulletproof glass and like slats from metal slats to prevent action from happening when the 50 cal machine gun drops down from underneath the bus, which happened multiple times in the series, and there's a guy controlling a joystick shooting it at you. There's no color to it anymore, but the stunts have obviously leveled up to like an absurd level that I can appreciate. The changes are really cool, but I also miss the days when they had Tyrese driving around in literally a neon purple Spider for an entire movie.
Yes. The cars have become a like, this is a box we have to check.
Right.
People expect there to be cars, so we need them to be here, but it is not like a crucial element of this franchise anymore.
Right. And of course, everybody, like the meme culture around Fast and the Furious online is absurd. People talking about like the Fast and the Furious Jurassic Park crossover, which by the way actually would make some kind of sense if they got stuck on an island where like this super rich billionaire used all his money to be like, I have a T-Rex on this island and like I want to see if like human beings can... He loves to race. He's like, yeah, no doubt. And also one of the greatest phrases I've ever heard in a movie that's also stupidly simple comes from Fast and the Furious, when Dominic Toretto looks at Brian after he beat him. He's like, oh man, I almost beat you. And he looked at him with like the most disgusting look on his face. He's like, oh, you don't get it. He's like, whether I win by an inch or a mile, a win is a win. And I was like, that's right. That's sports. That's sports.
That's true. That's true. That is sports. That is sports.
Yeah, man. I always take that into my. I always think about that because it's like by any means necessary. It's the most March Madness line of all time, and I feel like nobody pays attention to it enough. Yeah, no, but Dominic Toretto, greatest uncle of all time, confirmed. All right, cool, great, got that. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got, man. Did you have any ideas, any propaganda you'd like to push besides going to law school and becoming a witch?
I mean, no, I think that pretty much covers it. Don't be a racist witch. Really want to emphasize that. Don't be a racist lawyer.
Don't do weird stuff in the woods like become a racist. Do weird stuff in the woods like cast spells to get money.
To find your powers. Which, honestly, that's the other thing. Vin Diesel would absolutely love to become a witch if he could. Like, Vin Diesel, super nerd, huge nerd, and I think if you said, hey man, you have to give up Fast and Furious, but you will have magic powers, he'd walk away tomorrow.
Right. He would disappear like in a puff of smoke because he would already have said yes.
He'd be like, right, this is perfect. Right. No, I got you've done all my plug work for me, so thank you for that. And no, I'm just happy to join you and chat a little bit, and appreciate you having me on.
No, man, this is easily the best way to start the entire year. I don't know if people have picked up on it because I mention your show all the time on my podcast when I'm doing it by myself. But like, I love the Shutdown Full Cast. What you guys are about, Full Cast After Dark, is like fucking amazing. It is the number one way that I stay in connection with college football, and I don't watch enough college football for the amount of time I spend listening to you guys talk about college football. I spend more time listening to the Shutdown Fullcast per year than watching college football games.
Well, thank you. You definitely have a unusual understanding of the season, but that's totally fine with me.
I love Iowa touchdowns. I don't know what you're talking about. No doubt. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we will call it adieu. Shout out to Ryan Nanni. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Celebrity Hot Tub. It's right there on the screen. You guys know what to do. Yes, his profile photo is Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. So, correct. Yes, it is. I mean, honestly, one of the greatest movies that America has ever produced. Let's
sure. Yeah.
Is there a reason behind the profile photo? Did I miss that?
I'll explain this briefly. When I signed up for Twitter, I had no particular aim for it. I was just like, here's a stupid thing that I can do. I didn't want to use my name as my handle because I was writing with a pseudonym at the time. I really enjoy this very old Eddie Murphy's sketch on Saturday Night Live when he was on there called James Brown's Celebrity Hot Tub, which was mostly just Eddie Murphy doing his a really good James Brown impersonation for like 2 minutes, and nothing happens in the skit. He just sort of like talks about how the hot tub is too hot, but when I say talks, he's like, "Oh, good God, hot tub gonna make me sweat," and just does that, and it's really funny to me. So I was like, that'll be my handle. And then I went to go. At the time, I couldn't find a photo of him doing that, but I was like, I'll just use Eddie Murphy in Coming to America because I could find that photo. And now, if I ever talk about changing it, people yell at me. But at some point, I am going to have to change it because, like, occasionally too often, people are like, "Oh, you're not black?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. No. I'm also not the Prince of Zamunda, but, you know."
Yeah. Minor details.
Yeah, right.
I used to work for SB Nation Radio as a producer, and I reached out to you via Twitter one time about like, hey, can you come on the show kind of deal. This is back when I had a host who like legitimately was, he went 0 for 7 on takes of people that I would have on the show that would subsequently become major members of like sports media. Like I had PFT commenter on this show one time, and he was like, "Yo, man, you gotta stop like putting these random dudes on here." And I'm like, I had PFT commenter on there. I had one of the guys from the Fantasy Footballers on the show. He's really cool. He used to come on the show pretty consistently and give drop like actual knowledge that people can win money on the show. And he was just like, "You got to stop having these random dudes on. Like we need to be like going for like the big dogs." I had Brooke Pryor, who went from working for the Oklahoman to now being the ESPN Pittsburgh Steelers broadcaster.
That's right.
Like legitimately every person he told me that I need to stop having on the show is now like on TV on a regular basis.
Not me. So
it would have been
right
you.
About me.
It honestly would have made it 0 for 7 because there's no doubt in my mind he would have been like, "Who is this guy from SB Nation?" You got to start having these randos from SB Nation on, even though we're SB Nation Radio. So
sure, right.
Anyway.
Well, thank you for having me on today. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for all your insight about racism and becoming a witch and Dominic Toretto and everything.